if House of the Dragon does in fact start with Aegon's conquest of the Seven Kingdoms, then the question I have is how much of the detail in the prelude to it will be filled in. In Fire and Blood, you do get a brief idea of what the Targaryens were doing on Dragonstone in the years prior to the conquest, but much of it is a mystery, and you need to read between the lines. But there is enough there to piece some of it together. So what were the Targaryens doing for nearly 100 years? And then what made Aegon, out of all the Targaryens that had come and gone, decide he was going to conquer Westeros, seemingly out of nowhere? We do have a brief idea of what the Targaryens were up to. In Fire and Blood, there was a line that suggested they began to control and build trade in the local area and gain influence, which I think means interacting with the smaller houses that make up the islands of Blackwater Bay. For example, the Celtigars of Claw Isle and Velaryons of Driftmark. In fact, Aegon's own mother was a Velaryon, so there was definitely some low-level politics happening, such as marriages. However, it should also be noted the Velaryons also descended from Valyria, which may also have been a factor when limited options were available. We also know that Aenar the Exile left Valyria with 5 dragons, and that Balerion was the only original one left by the time of the conquest. This means 4 had died and 2 more, Vhagar and Meraxes, were hatched on Dragonstone. How these dragons died is not known. Maybe of old age, maybe in battle, but this compounds the question of what exactly made Aegon turn his eyes to Westeros. We know before his conquest, Aegon assisted Pentos and Tyrosh in their war with Volantis in the Century of Blood. He flew Balerion to Pentos to meet with the city's magisters, and then flew to Lys, where he burned the Volantene fleet before it could invade the city. It's odd why Aegon would involve himself in this war, but it's my idea that he did this to test himself in combat and to prove the theory to himself that with his dragon he could easily conquer the Seven Kingdoms, where you also had several different warring factions. We also know that Aegon had previously visited the citadel of Oldtown and the Arbor with his sister Visenya, and might have also visited Lannisport, and the idea that Aegon had never been to Westeros before his landing is a misconception, and the construction of the Painted Table does suggest they had been thinking of an invasion for a long while. The actions of Oldtown during the Wars of Conquest are very suspect. The High Towers did not send any troops when King Mern Gardner called his banners, so they were not at the field of fire, making them one of the stronger military houses after the conquest. It is also strange that when Aegon arrived in Oldtown, the gates were open to him with no fight. Now, this could just mean word of the burning of Harrenhal and the field of fire made it obvious to the High Towers and Oldtown they could not fight Aegon. But in combination with them not sending troops, it suggests that perhaps Aegon's trip to Oldtown were more than just visit, but diplomatic missions to gain allies. He could very easily have met with the High Towers and convinced them not to join the defence of the Reach. The Citadel could have also been involved. However, I think this is less likely than the High Towers. This also links into another bit of information that is easy to overlook, and that is, prior to his conquest, Aegon converted to the faith of the Seven, from what we presume was the Valyrian religion. Now, on the surface, there was no real reason to do this, as he more than had enough power needed to conquer the kingdoms with 1 dragon, let alone 3. So why did he do this? Well, this happened after his trips to Oldtown, which at the time was the centre of religion in Westeros. It's where the High Septon was located, and of course the location of the Starry Sept. Now, what I think happened is while in Oldtown, Aegon visited the Sept and maybe spoke to some Septons, where he realised while he could easily take Westeros, holding it would be another matter altogether. By converting to the faith of the Seven, it would raise Aegon's legitimacy in the eyes of the faithful and make him more palatable to the masses. It would make him seem much less of a foreign invader, which when you look at events like the Lycian Spring, could make things very difficult. The importance of the faith and being able to rule can be seen in Fire and Blood, with the faith uprising against Aegon's son Aenys when he was king, as well as in the main books with the High Sparrow storyline. Converting to the faith of the Seven would solve a lot of problems for Aegon, and maybe give him an easier time in the conquest. Whatever Aegon did in Oldtown, to me, it looks like it worked, and he successfully negotiated a peaceful way of controlling the city. But looking at the events of the conquest, and the fact that Loren Lannister did fight back against Aegon, if he did try the same tactic in Lannisport and the Westerlands, it didn't work as it did for Oldtown. So if you ask me what the Targaryens were doing for nearly 100 years on Dragonstone before Aegon, I think consolidating a small local power base, giving them enough loyal lords to form a small ground force, and then with Aegon engaging diplomacy with the kingdoms in the hopes of an easier invasion. So this all opens up an even bigger question. What was it that made Aegon want to conquer Westeros when he clearly had the power to head east to Essos with arguably more riches and more closely connected to Valyria. I do wonder if this is something that will be explored more in more detail in House of the Dragon, with it maybe starting with Aegon's youth, or perhaps with the use of flashbacks or non-linear timelines in a similar way to Netflix's The Witcher told its story. What was Aegon's motivation? It may be that he simply wanted to create a dynasty that would be unchanged for centuries, regain the power of Valyria. There is another idea, one I think House of the Dragon could explore. What if Aegon knew the Long Night was coming? We know now that a lot of Targaryens delved into prophecy. Maybe like Rhaegar Targaryen, he believed that the dragon must have 3 heads, and that's why Aegon married both sisters, Visenya and Rhaenys. We know from Daenys the Dreamer, who predicted the Doom of Valyria, that some prophecies come true, and that she did have real power. So what if she saw more than just the Doom? What if she also saw some other events to come? What if she saw the Long Night coming too? Using the Witcher method of splitting timelines to tell backstory, starting House of the Dragon with Daenys the Dreamer having a vision of events to come in her dreams would be a great hook. You could see her dream the Doom of Valyria, maybe the Long Night. I think it'd be great to tease some other key events and mysteries, such as the Dance of Dragons, the Blackfire Rebellions, the tragedy at Summerhall. It could be really cool if we saw Daenerys hatching her dragon eggs as well. I just think it'd be a really great narrative device to tie it all together and linking back to the main show. I do intend to do a more detailed video about Aegon's motivations in the future, but that was just kind of like the cliff note and just me thinking out loud. So what are your thoughts on this? If we do see Aegon's conquest in House of the Dragon, how much of the build up do you think we will see?